What's up? Welcome to episode 244 of First Geek 411. I'm your host, Cameron Franklin, and with me, as always, from West Coast, Best Coast, is Emma. Emma, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. Having a good week. How about you?
Nice. Same. Work has kicked off well. Had a great weekend. We'll talk a bit about that in a moment. But overall, things have been going pretty well. So excited that fall is here. It's October as of recording, and so hopefully we're getting out of insanely hot summertime and into nice cozy fall time. So so
We are
yeah,
back.
excited to hear what all we've been up to. It feels like after going a long time with us not doing anything, we've now done an episode, book club, and another episode, and so we're back on a normal cadence, and so it kind of feels weird coming back to all of the normal content that
Things.
we do, and so
Yep. We have returned.
with that, speaking of who we are First Geek 411. You can find us at our social media and around the internet as One Geek 411. Jump in our Discord server if you want to chat between shows. Shoot us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. Watch live on Twitch, 6:45 Mountain Time. Be part of the post-show chats, and find the videos over on YouTube where you can comment, and subscribe. Then you can also find our Redbubble store. Emma, what all have you been up to since the last time we chatted?
Yeah, my schedule is slowing down a little bit. So recently I've been catching up on Critical Role stuff because I've gotten insanely behind on all of that. And it's been fun to catch up and just see everything that I've missed in terms of the campaign and Candela Obscura and all of that.
I still need
I've
to
been
catch
doing
up
a
on
lot of
Candela Obscura. I watched the first episode and I need to watch the rest.
yeah, I'm in the midst of the first episode of chapter 2. Um their second episode just came out last week. Um so I'm catching up on all of that and that's been fun. I've been doing a lot of editing, video editing stuff for this semester and it's been a lot of fun so far and enjoying all of it. And I've started putting together my Halloween costume because I
Nice.
am ahead this year, which I love. And I am most of the way there. I've just got a few odds and ends and bits and pieces to get now, and then it's going to be very exciting and fun. It's a completely new outfit this year, which I haven't had the chance to put together anything new in recent years. So,
Ooh, what are you
yeah.
doing?
I'm gonna be a Zero Fail from Good Omens,
Nice.
and then my best friend in Seattle is gonna be Crowley. So
Nice.
yeah,
I saw your picture and I was not sure. I was like, that looks
yeah,
familiar, but I was like, I'm not 100% sure what that is. So
yeah. So it's very fun and very exciting, and yeah, I can't wait.
nice. Uh, for me, we had a pretty busy weekend. Good busy, but pretty busy. We went to a local food fest. Post some pictures of that in the Discord. Uh, we had these Pakistani wraps, beef wraps that were very good.
Tasty.
Turns out that it's all they're nearby. Wow, surprise. It's local stuff, but so really excited to go try them. It might be one of my new favorite restaurants. It was super good. And so I'm excited to see what their actual menu is like. Picked up some tacos, and then we also had some sliders. And then we picked up salsa because I thought it was going to be chips and salsa, and it ended up that it was just salsa. So
Ah,
we came home and had that later. But, it was good. It was just I would not have ordered that had I realized that it was just that. So,
yeah.
and then also this weekend, we watched Elemental, which is the latest Pixar movie. And I will
Is
say,
that
I don't. Go ahead.
in theaters or on Disney?
We watched it on Disney Plus.
Okay.
It had been in theaters. I feel like it came out during Barbenheimer. I could
Ah.
be wrong, but I feel like it might have been like the weekend before or the weekend after Barbenheimer. I don't exactly remember. Uh, and yeah, I think last weekend or 2 weekends ago, it got added to Disney Plus. Uh, and so we took time to watch it. I really enjoyed it. I will say, I feel like they marketed this movie very poorly. Because I feel like it was marketed as like a Romeo and Juliet between like the different kinds of elements, but that's like the B plot. Like that's not what the movie's about. Like it's a story about immigration and like making a new home in a different, like it literally starts with two of the main character's parents arriving on a boat. Like it was really good. And I feel like there was not a lot of excitement for it because they didn't present it that way.
Yeah.
And that really confused me. Like, it's like there were some good jokes that like some of them were the ones from the trailer, but like it really felt like you did not advertise this as what it actually is.
Yeah.
And so, but we really liked it. We also watched the like behind the scenes with the director afterwards. And so like that was really cool to hear him talk about his experience. But it was just like, yeah, legitimately, I was like super confused just because it was like not as advertised in a good way. I'm glad it wasn't that.
Yeah.
But like, I was just very confused by all of that.
Yeah, I would not have guessed that that was the main plot based off the like the trailers and stuff.
Yeah. And yeah, like they obviously like there is like the Romeo and Juliet, the fire and what, like that is definitely there. But like I guess I had expected it to be more of like that's the main plot and then this other stuff is the side plot. But it's like no, it's the other way around. I was just like again, it was just like very strange. But definitely recommend, especially if you have Disney Plus. Go take a look. I was looking up like the recent Pixar movies because I think this is probably my favorite of their like recent ones. I did not see Lightyear. But yeah, this is probably my favorite one. Maybe even like all the way back to Coco. Like since Coco. I know like this definitely is above Soul, Luca, and Turning Red for me. I did not see Lightyear. Onward was really good, but I don't know if that's just like the D&D fan in me. That was like the subject matter just hits different when it's like but yeah, I really enjoyed it. Definitely recommend. Really cool animation as you would expect from Pixar. And it was really cool getting to hear the behind the scenes. And so other than that, we have been continuing our watch of Ted Lasso. We just started season 3, literally right before podcast. So we did like the first episode. And so it's making me sad, the direction that they're going. It's a good story, but like where they're going with some of the characters just makes me sad that we're going there. But I'm really enjoying it still. And I'm very excited to see how it ends, especially since it's a short show. Like it's only 3 seasons. And so, right? I say that it's only 3 seasons.
I don't know. I don't watch it.
Let's see, 3-season arc. Yep.
Yeah.
And so I'm really enjoying it. Definitely recommend. It's very like, I've said that one of the things that I like about it is that it's very positive without being, I don't know, small-minded is not the right word, but it's like, it's positive, but it's like things can get hard and that's okay. They're not like running away from hardship to make like a positive show or have a positive main character. And it's more about like being positive through those things. And so I've really enjoyed that. Then on the video game front, I beat Final Fantasy 16. Finally, it's been a journey,
Woohoo!
and so enjoyed the ending. It is the ending that I both expected and then was also shocked by.
There you go.
I guess in the sense of like I'm like, oh, this is what they're going to do. Okay, but really enjoyed that. I definitely feel like it stuck the landing. I know, like I'd said when it had come out, that like there's a good chance that this was going to be my favorite Final Fantasy. I do think, I think it's gonna. That's where I'm at right now. Like I'll say it that way. I do think it stuck the landing for the most part. There's. I don't want to do spoiler casts since you have the game, but also since that's not where we're at. But like there are things I would have liked to have spent more time on. One of my complaints, it was that there are side quests that feel like they're mandatory content, and then there's other side quests that feel like they're a waste of time. And I wish it was a little bit more clear, like what's gonna like actually progress the story and what is just like, or progress the story in the sense of provide something useful for the story, versus what is just, hey, this is another fetch quest, we're gonna go do this thing, and so.
Yeah.
But overall, I really liked it. I loved the tone. One of the things I said, I was streaming it over on Karen plus Deanna. One of the things that I said is I feel like they managed to capture me for all the quick time events. That it was like, it's just hit square or hit R1 or whatever. But like, I was so in. And so, and then, how's that going for you? Have you had time for any? I know you've been back on Assassin's Creed lately. When you've had time.
I'm alternating between Assassin's Creed and Final Fantasy. Assassin's Creed has gotten a little more time because I've had it for longer and would like to actually finish it, especially since Mirage is coming out Wednesday.
Oh yeah, I forgot it was that quick.
So I would like to actually, get at least pretty close to endgame, if not be an endgame for Valhalla when Mirage comes out. But 16 is going pretty well. It's still like the long cutscenes for me. Like I have to be in a certain mood to like be willing to sit through all of those.
Yeah.
So it's like the times that I do play it, like I really have to be in a certain state of mind. So otherwise, like I'm enjoying it in terms of combat and everything. So yeah, I'm like mid game.
Okay.
Roughly.
Nice. I'm trying to decide if I'm gonna do a platinum in it. There's just like so many other games coming out that like, because for the platinum you have to do a second playthrough, let alone the fact that I'm gonna need to clean up trophies that I missed. And so I'm just like, do we do this? What do we do? Like, so we'll see. And then I also started playing Lies of P, which is the Soulsborne about Pinocchio.
I've been so tempted to get that.
Yeah.
I don't like. I feel like it's one of those things that could either be really good or really bad.
Yeah. Have you played like an Elden Ring, Dark Souls, anything like that before? Okay. Overall, like the general feedback that I've heard from people is that it's the best Soulsborne that's not made from Software, which is the company that like kind of pioneered the difficult action RPG. And so I'm really enjoying it. I'm like 2 major bosses in.
Okay.
And I'm really enjoying it. None of them have felt like, there's been a handful that I've gotten stuck on for a couple attempts, but like there hasn't been anything that just felt brutally unfun boss wise. There are actually some like random enemies that I think are harder than the bosses. And like I've like taken to trying to avoid them. Like, fascinating. Yeah. It's not even necessarily that I feel like part of it for them, it's just like, because everything's like puppets, so everything's like cybernetic and like machines and stuff like that. And so there's this enemy that like it has like a stove oven thing on its back and like a coal oven and then like a giant shovel. And I just, for the life of me, I feel like every time they show up, we're in like the worst place to fight them and it just demolishes me.
Yeah.
I've managed to beat it once, but like the other times it's like, just like, I'm done. We're just running through it. Like, we'll be fine. The game does do a lot with there are certain enemies you only have to fight once, even if they're not a boss, which is kind of nice. There's certain areas that like once you clear out this area, this thing is gone. The other stuff might respawn, but like, but I'm really enjoying that. And I'm enjoying seeing like a lot of what's going on. Some of my confusion from the demo has been kind of alleviated. Because one of the things that confused me in the demo is like, in Soulsborne's, there's like a bonfire is like the stereotypical one, or a site of grace. And this one, they're called stargazers, but it's basically like the place that you stop and heal, and that respawns enemies. Or for like Jedi Fallen Order, it's like the meditation circles, that same idea. So for these, you can't level up at those after a certain point in the story. And that really confused me in the demo, because I guess I missed that line of dialogue. And I was like, why can't I level up more? I was so confused.
So wait,
but
is
like
it's leveling up specific to certain like stargazer points then?
So there's a person who is the blue fairy, who's like that analog, and she's the one that helps you level up. But she's in a specific location. So at the very beginning of the game, she like gives some of her power to this couple stargazers so you can level up on your way to her. But then once you meet her, you have to go to her to level up. And I missed that in the demo.
Yeah.
And so I was like, why? Like, I am stuck. I cannot figure out why I can't level up. And I just missed a line of dialogue. But I'm enjoying it. I'm trying to think what else. I met Geppetto, which I mean, you meet him pretty early on. Got Jiminy helping me out, being my conscience and my guide.
Nice.
I'm enjoying the world. I'm liking that the story, at least so far, is not vague. Like, that's always kind of one of the criticisms of the Soulsborne games. Is it's like, what is intentionally vague versus what is, they just didn't finish it. Like, it kind of has that feel of like, is this not explained because they wanted you to try to puzzle it? Or is it not explained because they ran out of time and they said, our fans will make guesses. And so this one feels like it has an established like story that it wants you to discover. And so I'm really enjoying that. But yeah, that's really, I mean, for the most part, what I've been up to. A handful of other stuff here and there. But other than that, yeah, just kind of hanging out, doing stuff.
Nice.
I didn't intro this at the top of the show, I don't think. But this week we are talking about IGN's top 100 TV shows of all time. They put out this list on Tuesday of last week. And so like I posted it in the Discord, and I've had some chats in other Discords with various people about the list. They put out a handful of the other ones as well. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to specifically talk about the top 25. And then we got some Good Omens season 3 news, as well as some Doctor Who MTG stuff that is continuing to roll out. And so with all of that, let's jump into the IGN top 100 TV shows. And so before we get into this, I do want to kind of hit their criteria for what it is that they are judging or ranking. And so this is their 2023 revamp of their top 20 TV shows of all time. The show must have finished its run or been on the air for at least 10 years and had a serious impact on television as a whole. And so they even call out, while this does exclude some of our current running favorites like The Last of Us, The Boys, Squid Game, and more, those shows haven't completed their stories yet. Don't worry. We'll likely see them eligible for the next time we refresh our list. So I did like that. I feel like
that's a good clarifier.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a good line to draw. Like the show must be like done.
Yeah.
And so I liked that a lot as like a rule. And then they said voters were asked to consider the following: how influential was the show? How well has it aged? Did the show have ongoing cultural significance? And obviously, we considered best versus favorite. And then they say in parentheses, just because you love Love is Blind, that doesn't mean it's one of the greatest TV shows ever made. Sorry, those are just the rules. So.
Yep. That's a concept that I like to clarify when people ask me about like film and TV and stuff is, do you want what I enjoy or like what I think is actually good? Because they're not the same thing.
Right. And then they also have a list of who all was involved. It is not just IGN editors. They have people from Nerdist, TV Guide, iHeartRadio, Nerds of Color, POC Culture, Forbes. So like they have a list of their breakdown of who all was on it. And so, yeah, I really liked that. I liked that they included who was there and that it was not all just, hey, this is our staff, but it's actually like named people. And then, yeah, I'm very curious to what you were just saying about the best versus favorite, because I think that's going to play into how we go through these and how we kind of chat about stuff. And so I'm really interested to do that. And so what we're going to do is we are going to go through their top 25 in batches of 5. That way, if we don't have something to say about a show, we can skip it. But that way we're also not just reading off this show. Have you seen this one? This show. Have you seen this one? And so, so we're going to start with 25. And so do 25 through 21 and then 20 through 16. There we go. Numbers. And so number 25, Succession. 24, Freaks and Geeks. 23, The Office. 22, Arrested Development. And what should be number 1, but is instead 21, Avatar: The Last Airbender. We were initially going to do top 20, and then Avatar was 21. So I knew we had to expand it to top 25. Yep. And so of these 5, how many have you seen? Which are your favorites from these 5? What do you think?
I have seen 1.5.
Okay.
I have seen all of Avatar and part of The Office. I did not finish The Office for reasons that I have mentioned before.
As has been discussed.
I do not like it, and the humor just really got on my nerves. But I can see why it would make this list.
Yeah. For me, I have seen The Office, Arrested Development, and then Avatar. I'm honestly surprised at The Office is so far down on this list. And
in terms of not being like a higher rating or whatever.
Yeah. And part of it, we'll talk about some of the other shows, and I agree with their placement. But like, I feel like when you look at 2000 sitcoms, like The Office is the one that has really like stood the test of time, has had a lasting cultural impact, much more so than other shows. And then you even get into the part of The Office that is, this is the starting point for so many of these people's careers, or their takeoff point for so many of these people's careers of like, and not just even actors, but like so many of the writers, it was their first like professional writing gig was on The Office. And just like the cultural significance of it, not just for the show itself, but for its impact on Hollywood as a whole. And yeah, I think I'm shocked that it is this low. Again, not necessarily that I disagree. Oh, and I should say this as well. This is not going to be us bashing the list. No. We're going to talk through it. We're going to kind of share our thoughts and feelings as we're doing here. But making a list like this is extremely difficult. And we're not here to just like pile on like the internet's criticism because my show should have been higher. Although Avatar should have been number one, but but yeah. So that's The
I do know
Office.
where the bias comes from.
Yes, yeah. Um, and then number 22 with Arrested Development, that shocks me because I feel like Arrested Development is the show that I did not understand. That like a lot of people love that show. I've seen the whole thing, and like it is just I feel like I need to go back and watch it. It is such a different like set of jokes that like or style of humor. There we go. That like I feel like did not land with me when I watched it, but I need to go back and see it again. I really enjoyed it, but it was just like it was not. I did not laugh out loud. It was just like not my like. I think I made it to like the end of season 2 before I like actually laughed at a joke.
Yeah.
But I think it was a lot more wit than like, ah, here's a joke. But like, but I'm surprised by that. And then Avatar. I mean,
We love
this
it.
is yeah. I came to
It
Avatar
is
late.
a
Yeah,
great show.
yeah. Cannot recommend it enough. I'm also a Korra apologist. I don't know if they had considered putting Korra on here or if they're kind of lumping all of this in together. They do talk about the description. They do talk specifically about Aang, which leads me to they don't mention Korra, so that leads me to think they would treat it as a separate show versus like a second season or second series or continued series of the series, whatever.
Or like a
But
sequel or whatever.
yeah, but yeah, amazing show. I came to it late. I actually like watched it in college, and then right as Korra was coming out, that was like when I got into it. And so again, highly recommend. There's a reason that I cosplay Aang. Like, cannot say enough about how good this show is. And so,
It's still like one of my favorite cosplays I see at conventions every year is the cabbage guy.
yeah.
And it's like the cabbage guy and like someone who goes around as like a cosplay repair mom or dad who just like has repair stuff. Like those two are my favorite things that I see every year at conventions. Um, but always the cabbages guy,
Yeah.
and it cracks me up because he's just a little side character that has no major plot contributions, but he always has his cabbages destroyed.
For sure. You know, sometimes you just wrong place, wrong time, and the Avatar
Yeah,
continually has a grudge and destroys all of your stuff. Like, you know,
exactly.
it happens. So, um, next 20 through 16. In 20, we got Batman, the animated series. 19, I Love Lucy. 18, Star Trek, the original series. 17, Cheers. And then 16, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Any thoughts or feelings on this?
Given that my dad's side of the family are all Star Trek nerds, major nerds, I have absolutely seen the entire original series. Um, Otherwise, I wouldn't be a disappointment to my family, but like it would be a problem if I had not seen Star Trek. Um, and I do love it. It's very campy these days, very like cheesy, um, but it does. It does hold up in my opinion. In as long as you go in with that expectation
Yeah.
of it's gonna be cheesy, um, and it does. It is very delightful in the grand scheme of things. And I mean, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I have professors who have worked on that, so I have a lot of interesting, like, behind the scenes stories that I've heard about it. Um, but I have not actually seen it. That being said, I feel like I have a good sense of what it was like general storyline, plot line of it, so it's definitely one of those that's like I don't feel like I need to see it, but given that it was happening when I was growing up, like coming out, and so many people were into it, like it did kind of define that genre of like teen, young adult sort of vampire werewolf genre. So I can see why it's here in that regard.
Yeah.
And those are the two that I've seen of these five. I know a little bit about I Love Lucy, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah. This is the section of shows that I have watched some of all of them, but could not really tell you much about any of them. Other than Batman the Animated Series. Like, I haven't seen it since, like, I was a kid, but I loved Batman the Animated Series growing up. I'm happy to see it, like, still on this list. And, like, that's definitely one of the shows. That and 90s X-Men was definitely, like, shows that really defined a lot of superhero, like, who the superheroes are, to me, is because of those shows. And so I'm excited to see it on here. This is something that, like, if I take anything from this list, it's probably the desire to go try to rewatch Batman the Animated Series. Like, if they're putting it this high, like, that's something that, like, I'm, like, legitimately interested in. Like, going and actually tracking down and trying to... I don't know if it's on, like, where it is at on streaming services. I would assume it's on HBO, but, like, I don't know. And then other than that, I'm curious where I Love Lucy is going to shake out as they continue to do these lists. There's, like, a generation that is, like, an extremely impactful show. But I don't, like, necessarily hear people still talking about it that are our generation. And so I'm curious if that's the show that, like, will have new legs because of streaming. Like, you hear that a lot with The Office because, like, there are kids, like literal children, who are finding The Office through streaming. And then kind of getting reintroduced to the show that way. I don't really hear people talk about I Love Lucy the same way, even though I would say for its time, like, I mean, again, I Love Lucy was radically impactful. And then I've talked Star Trek before, but, like, that's a show that, like, I've seen some of. Like, I feel like we were a Star Wars family, not a Star Trek family. And, like... Yeah. So I've seen some episodes of it, but it was something that, like, oh, it was on and there was nothing else, so we watched it because it's sci-fi. And then
between the two, my family was definitely, like, more of the Star Trek, if anything. Although I didn't watch it until I was older, but, like, of the two, it was Star Trek for my family.
Yeah. And then for me, Buffy the Vampire Slayer kind of falls in that same camp of, like, that's a show that I've heard a lot of people talk about, a lot of people reference. I've probably only seen an episode or two of it. But I know it's something that I see spoofed and I see referenced around. And so, but, like, yeah, I don't have any specific experience with it besides, like, again, briefly seeing it. Okay. Next 15, Seinfeld, 14, Watchmen, 13, Star Trek, The Next Generation, 12, Fleabag, and 11, Lost. I'll go ahead and hop in for this one. Seinfeld is a show I've never gotten. That's one that just, like, never clicked with me. I've seen a ton of episodes, like, with family, and I just never understood that one. I don't know if that's in, like, the Arrested Development camp for me. But, like, I just don't know. Like, that was a show that was, like, I don't understand how people... It's that, and I don't know if it's later on the list, but Everybody Loves Raymond. Those are two shows that I just, like, never understood. And I just don't know if it was, like, the age I was when they were on. But, like, there's that. Seinfeld is extremely impactful. That's definitely one of those shows that, like, again, kind of like best versus favorite. Like, as someone who, like, does not connect with it, like, I see where they're coming from. Like, and then Watchmen, I have wanted to go and see. I loved the movie. And I want to go and watch the series. But haven't really had the chance to ever do that. Um, and then I've never heard of Fleabag. Have you heard of this
You
one?
haven't?
Oh,
I haven't seen it, but I've definitely heard of it.
okay.
It's from what I've heard of it, it gives vibes similar to uh the Wonderful Miss Maisel, something
Oh,
Miss
okay.
Maisel. It gives vibes similar to that.
Okay. I'll check it out and I'll see if I can find a place where we can watch it. And then Lost. I started watching that one summer in Connecticut, and I got a couple episodes in and then fell off. For me, it's the I like not necessarily that I know how it ends, but like I know the reception to the ending, and it kind of makes it hard to like want to dive into this series when I know it wasn't necessarily like people didn't like how it ended, and it's like I don't really
Yeah.
want to put myself through that. But um, but yeah, so that's where I'm at for those. What about you?
So I have not seen any of these five.
Okay,
Um,
you haven't seen Next Generation?
I have not seen Next Gen. Um,
Okay,
because I think primarily I didn't have access to like wherever it's streaming. Um, although I have been like casually been wanting to watch more of the Star Trek series. Um, I've kind of over the past however many years wanted to watch Lost primarily because I do like that kind of like sci-fi weird what's happening. Um, but I'm also in the same boat as you in terms of given that the ending was not well received by people, I don't really want to commit to it when I have so many other things to that I'm really into to watch. So I don't want to watch it until
mm-hmm.
like I have absolutely nothing else to finish. But
There's
that
always
from what
something
I've
else to finish.
there's always something else to finish, and but given the general genre of it, um, like it seems like one of those shows that I would enjoy and get into, as well as Watchmen. Um, that and Watchmen are the two that I've wanted to sort of watch at some point. Um, although I don't quite understand why Lost is on here, but again, I haven't seen it, so who am I to
Yeah.
judge or any of it? Um, but it's fun to see like comic stuff and superhero stuff and things like Avatar on this list.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it's really paying homage to the things that have actually had a cultural impact.
Yeah, I agree. We'll get into. I was gonna say something else about Lost. We'll get into it once we actually get to this next set. But um, so 10 Parks and Rec, 9 Game of Thrones, 8 The Twilight Zone, 7 Mad Men, and then 6 The Sopranos. What do you think of those 5?
I love Parks and Rec, um, in terms of that like mockumentary, governmental, boring everyday stuff. Um, which is slightly weird given that I absolutely hated The Office.
Mm-hmm.
But Parks and Rec I very much enjoyed and had such a fun time watching. Game of Thrones I've only seen the first season, but I mean, yeah, I can this Game of Thrones is one of those shows that I would instinctually like bring up of my own accord to put on a list like this, just given how many people watched it and followed it and talked about it um, for the entire run of the show,
Mm-hmm.
not just for like one or two seasons and then like the viewership dropped off. Like it was a huge hit from start to finish, even though like the last season or so sucked, from what I've
Yeah.
heard. Like it just makes sense that it would exist on a list like this, regardless of position, because it's like, yeah, um, it did captivate so many people and have an impact on those people for the entire run of the show. Um, Twilight Zone, I haven't seen, but it seems like another one of those fun, almost like Star Trek, that would be fun to watch, just out of how cheesy it is.
Yeah, fun to like have on in the background kind of thing.
Yeah, like while I'm working on other things. Um, so like I love older sort of, especially science fiction shows. So like classic Doctor Who, Star Trek, and I would assume Twilight Zone, for like just putting them on to play in the background while I'm doing like crafts or chores or things, because it's like I wouldn't pay full attention to this anyway if I were just sitting down, but it's fun to like watch as I'm doing other stuff. And just given how much I've heard other people talk about this, even to this day in 2023, like it would make sense that this also exists on this list in my head.
Yeah. For me, I love Parks and Rec. I fully endorse it being higher than The Office on this list. I've thought that that was a hot take for a long time. I feel like general public view, people talk about like maybe cultural impact. Like The Office, I feel like has a much larger cultural impact than Parks and Rec. But I felt like Parks and Rec is a good show, and I really feel like it learned from The Office. Considering it was by two of the people who did The Office,
Yeah.
and after they kind of found their own separate voice in this second show, I loved what they did. I think it has one of the best final seasons of any sitcom, and probably one of the best finales of any sitcom as well. That gives the characters like their love and respect without just being like it's a silly finale or whatever. And so, Game of Thrones. I put this like this. This is what I was going to say about Lost. Like I feel like Game of Thrones and Lost, both of their finales, kind of like took away a lot of their goodwill. Of like those were the shows that were on like that like everyone talked about all of the time. And I feel like the later like parts of them kind of dropped the ball there. Because of that, I'm surprised to just see them this high. I know that more through Game of Thrones versus Lost, as I was saying. But I'm kind of shocked to see it. Like, again, like the first 4-ish seasons of Game of Thrones are so amazing. And it seems like House of the Dragon is kind of returning a bit more to that. But I'm happy to see this sort of like epic fantasy get this high up on the list, but I'm kind of surprised it did at the same time. And then for the other three, Twilight Zone, Mad Men, and Sopranos, these are all shows. For Twilight Zone and Mad Men, I think I've seen a little bit of both of those, but have not seen Sopranos. Mad Men is a show another one that, like, again, even having not seen it, I see it referenced quite a bit. And so I feel like there's a lot that they like that one has had that's impactful, even though I haven't specifically seen it, as with The Sopranos. Like that's another.
It's Twilight Zone is free with ads on Amazon.
Oh, nice.
Sorry, I'm looking up some of these as we go and adding them to my various streaming lists,
Nice.
so that I can watch them.
Uh,
So there you go. If you want to watch the Twilight Zone, it's free with ads on Amazon Prime.
And with that, let's get to the top 5. So number 5, Twin Peaks. Number 4, The X-Files. Number 3, Breaking Bad. number 2, The Simpsons, and then number 1, The Wire. Sorry, not past tense. I'll say from me, Twin Peaks is a show that like I literally saw references to Twin Peaks like earlier today, and like last week, and so that's another show that like I haven't seen. I feel like a lot of these, or the 3 of these, I guess, were like before my time, and so like I remember the X-Files being a big thing when I was little, but like it was not a show I was watching. And then like Breaking Bad is just a show that I just like never really got into, but I know is like dearly beloved. And then Simpsons wasn't a show I was like allowed to watch as a kid. And so I just like never necessarily got into it. I've seen like some episodes and stuff like that, but just never really saw a ton of it. And then The Wire, again, I feel like I've heard people talk about this show, but it's not a show that I've seen. And so I'm kind of interested in if this is the number 1, what does that mean? So
interestingly enough, I don't actually think I've ever heard of The Wire, which is fascinating to me. I am in a similar boat with you in regards to the Simpsons. I was not allowed to watch it growing up, and by the time I like was an adult, it just never really interested me as a show. Like the bits and pieces I have seen of it throughout my life, it just does not attract my interest, but it has had a long run in the world, and gets a lot of those references both to other things and other things to it. Along with, I mean, Twin Peaks and the X-Files are both like huge references in those genres of sort of sci-fi, fantasy, extraterrestrial, cryptid things. So like a lot of shows and stuff that focus on those genres or subgenres make a lot of references to the X-Files and Twin Peaks in like actual like Easter eggs, or how they're like made production wise or editing wise, or they were real basically trailblazers in their things basically. So it really does make sense in my head that they are where they are. I have not seen either of them, but I have wanted to watch both the X-Files and Twin Peaks for a long time. There's so many things to watch that I don't have time to watch them all. So that's unfortunate, but at some point I will get around to it.
Yeah, so, and that's
yeah.
kind of where I'm at. I've been like kind of randomly thinking about watching Twin Peaks anyway. And like, oh, well, maybe this is my excuse to go and do that. Like, I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting to go and see, especially for the shows I think that are like our childhoods, but were adult shows, like shows that were not like targeted at kids. Because again, it's like I remember X-Files being all the rage, but I've like maybe seen 1 or 2 episodes, just because that wasn't my demographic. I was watching Cartoon Network and like vibing with that. Exactly. And so, it's kind of interesting to go back and try to like, I'm kind of curious to go back and try to watch some of these and just see what they have. And to see like what holds up versus what doesn't. But with that, go ahead and move on to our next topic. Listeners, let us know. What do you think? again, what do you think of the list? We're not trying to like dogpile on. Like, what do you think of the shows and where they would be? And which of these have you seen? But let us know that over in the Discord. Emma, let's go into your discussion topic for this week. What do you got?
Yeah. Nothing super dramatic. But in relationship to Good Omens, which I was talking about briefly earlier, Amazon has not confirmed that a season 3 is like set in stone, but Neil Gaiman has confirmed that he's working on scripts for season 3, which is great and exciting for all of us mega fans. He has also said that if Amazon does not renew Good Omens for season 3, he would publish the scripts in some way, shape, or form.
Oh, that's exciting.
Because so season 3 would be the final season of Good Omens, because that's where he and Terry Pratchett, the story arc of that season would be the end of like the entire story arc that he and Terry Pratchett had planned, even for the second book that ended up never happening. I follow this stuff in regards to Good Omens because I love this show and I love the book. So he has said that if season 3 doesn't get picked up or renewed, that he would release something, whether it's a script book or like an actual piece of writing, of what that storyline would be for people to actually have. So even if we don't get season 3 on screen, we would get it on paper from Neil Gaiman. I am assuming that is also in part because it's part of the contract deal he made with Amazon of like he would be allowed to do that if it's not picked up again. Which is great. But he is working on the scripts for a season 3 right now. Because the writer's strike is now over, he's been able to go back to writing things. So it is exciting in the sense that it's like something is happening, even if it's not officially official yet. So
yeah, it's at least the cogs are moving, right? Like that's kind of
the cogs are moving. Like Amazon knows like that is one more element that will go into the Amazon higher ups deciding whether or not to pick it up, is the fact that the showrunner already has scripts on the way. So
and I wish that more writers had the ability to do stuff like that, of like, hey, like, so like an example, I'm a bit less interested in what the next season would have been, admittedly, than Good Omens, but like an example of How I Met Your Father, of like that show was canceled after the second season. We didn't really get like a real finale. And so like I'm, as a fan of How I Met Your Mother and kind of by extension How I Met Your Father, I am curious to what were they intending for their actual conclusion? Like what was their actual story arc? And I wish we could find that out, but it doesn't seem like that's something that we're going to get. And so I really like this idea of, and like, granted, Neil comes at it. He is a writer first and like a screenwriter kind of second. But like, so for him, he comes at it as like, hey, we'll make the book somehow in some form and release that. And so that's obviously not something everyone can do, but
I will give it to the fan base one way or another. Like, you guys will get it, just not like we don't know yet in what form that's going to happen. So
and I feel like season 2 was very positively received from what I saw.
Yes.
Just from now, granted, part of that is from what I saw is talking to you, who's a little biased, but like
just a little bit, as someone who, as a high schooler, was entirely changed by the book. Um,
But I feel like again, I just feel like the season had very positive reviews. I'm like scrolling through IMDb. Yeah, a lot of high sevens, a lot of eights. Like,
yeah, 85% on Rotten Tomatoes, 8 out of 10 on IMDb.
yeah, I
Um,
really feel like hopefully that means we'll be getting another season, and that we'll get to see them tell the end of the story they want to tell.
yeah, same.
Stay tuned for more Neil Gaiman news.
Yeah.
That's then going to bring us to our final topic for the week, and that is that we have gotten some more Doctor Who cards. For this coming at us via IGN for listeners, this week is the full, I believe the full reveals for the Doctor Who decks. So y'all will be getting more and more as the week goes. We don't have those as of recording. So we're not necessarily going to dwell on these cards too much because we'll have time later on to talk about them more. Try to do something around the actual release. Go ahead.
Shout out to Doctor Who for making top 50 on the IGN top 100 shows.
Oh, nice. What did it end up at? I meant
46.
to look. 46. Okay. I meant to look.
But it's Doctor
it,
Who, the new Who starting in 2005.
Okay. So I feel like I looked it up because I was curious how they would have done it, and
I figured it would make it on the top 100. I just now was looking up what spot it made. So yeah. I'm glad that it made the top 50. Okay, continue.
Yeah, great. No, great call out. Okay, so like I said, we're not going to dwell on these cards too much. Kind of just chat about them. We'll talk through. Kind of for the sake of this, more interested in what you think of it as a piece of Doctor Who, rather than as a Magic card. But we'll talk more about that as we go. So we got Blink, which is a saga, and so there's 4 different stages, and so stages 1 and 3, which is confusing. But you choose a creature, and then its owner shuffles it into their library because they blinked. And then the 2 and 4, you create a Weeping Angel, a 2/2 black alien angel artifact with first strike and vigilance, and whenever your opponent casts a creature spell, this permanent isn't a creature until end of turn. We saw the Weeping Angel card previously, and I love this idea that casting a creature is what makes it not a creature itself, because now it's being looked at by something. I love that flavor. And then I really like the idea of, these people got sent back in time, back into the deck, and now there's a clue that something's missing. It feels so simple, which I think is what good design should be. This makes so much sense for Blink. But what do you think?
Yeah, it's fun to see how they're sort of incorporating the capabilities of the Weeping Angels into the game in a way that makes sense for the game, which is fun. Because the things they're known for is, when you're looking at them, they're not a creature. They're a stone statue.
Just the statue hanging out, vibing.
But the moment you look away or close your eyeballs, they're coming to get you. And it's so simple and yet so complicated at the same time.
Yeah.
And I just think it's so cool that they're the way that they're incorporating those into the game to sort of honor a well-loved and very terrifying Doctor Who creature is great.
Yeah. I'll say this, and we'll see it for some of the other ones today as well, or that we'll look at today. They're doing what I think is one of the best things, which is anytime something is creative, something that is creative feels obvious, that shows that it was done well. Because that's the part that you just say, oh, yeah, of course. What else would it have been? And then
Yeah.
you know that they spent way more time on it. They've tried to figure all this stuff out. But like, I feel like that's kind of what like a lot of the Doctor Who cards seem like for me. Is it's like, oh,
Yeah.
of course, that makes so much sense that it's this
It's
thing.
almost like what is it? Occam's razor,
Yes, yeah.
where it's like the the right answer is most often the most simple.
Exactly. Exactly. So we had blink, now we have don't blink. Until end of turn, if one or more creatures would enter the battlefield from exile or after being cast from exile, their owner shuffles them into their library, and then you can cycle it. So this is like if something was to come in, things coming in from exile is going to be one of the major themes of the decks. And so this is going to kind of be a way of like presumably the villains deck stopping the doctors from doing stuff. And so I like it. The flavor text is blink and you're dead.
Da-da.
Yeah. And then crazy scary angel. Scary angels is not really something Magic has done before. There's been a few that are like kind of weird, but like not nearly to the extent of the weeping angels. We of course had to get Wibbly Wobbly Timey Wimey.
Yeah.
Which has the time travel mechanic. So for each suspended card you own and each permanent you control with a time counter, you may add or remove a time counter, and then you can draw a card. Super excited that this is here. This is like one of the most iconic like phrases from New Who. And so very excited that we get to see that here. We got Decaying Time Loop. This is one that I'm not familiar. I haven't seen this part of Doctor Who, but you can discard all cards in your hand, then draw that many cards, and then it has Retrace, so you can cast it from your graveyard by discarding a land and paying the other costs. So Retrace cards are powerful. Again, I don't necessarily want us to talk about this from the sense of Magic the Gathering, but like, do you know what this is referencing? Like I said, this is one that like I haven't seen the 13th Doctor stuff. So
it's complicated.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. If that's the answer we need to land on, that's fine.
So we're talking not Wibbly Wobbly, but Decaying Time
Decaying
Loop.
Time Loop.
Yeah, it's complicated. It's complicated in the whole. Yeah, it's the
For people that are
life
listening,
is not a line.
Yeah.
It is more of a loop, and there are more points in the loop in the circle than we previously thought. But then the 13th Doctor got caught in the loop, and it was falling apart.
Okay.
That is a very simplistic explanation.
Hey, that sounds good.
For the plot line that none of us are very happy with.
Reasonable.
But Magic is taking a bad thing and like using it in a relatively decent way. So yeah.
Yep. On a completely other end of the spectrum, we got one of my favorite cards that we've had, to the surprise of no one. But we have River Song's Diary. Imprint, whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell from their hand, exile it instead of putting it into the graveyard as it resolves. Then at the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 4 or more spells exiled with River Song's Diary, choose one of them at random. You may cast it without paying its mana cost. So that I love the idea that it's just containing all of these random things through your journey. What your opponents do also gets put in the diary, and then like, I'm not sure if this is exactly what they're going for, but like what it makes me think of is the idea of like, oops, a spoiler slips out. And that's like what the random spell is. Again, I don't know if that's the actual flavor that they're going for, but that's what it makes me think of. And so super excited. I've said multiple times, River Song is one of my favorite characters, if not my favorite character, my favorite non-Doctor character in Doctor Who. And so, very excited to see this.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add on it?
I mean, I've always loved the River Song arc. And like the Notebook is so iconic
Mm-hmm.
of her character and her story, and like it River Song always, if I'm remembering correctly, was originally just meant to be a one-off character in Silence in the Library, and then they took it and created a story arc out of it that was so amazing and delightful, and like she's now one of, the most loved characters, and it's so fun to see them creating a card out of her,
Mm-hmm.
the object that pretty much defines her.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, and her relationship with the Doctor. So,
And then by no means unique to this card, but I love that the diary is a TARDIS. So
yeah.
let's see. Crisis of Conscience, 6-man. Destroy all tokens or destroy all non-land non-tokens. So, so this is classic Who. What is the Crisis of
Tom
Conscience?
Baker. Got my Tom Baker scarf.
Got your scarf. You're ready.
I'm ready. I'm so ready. This is the deck that I pre-ordered. Was the Classic Who deck, and I'm so excited. So, again, I love Classic Who. I love New Who as well. Obviously, that's where I started. But like, there's something so different and unique about Classic Who that is just, I love it.
And then is this like original Time War? Is that what is happening here? What is the Crisis of Conscience?
So, fun fact: the whole Time War thing is completely New Who. It's
okay.
Yeah, it's not really Classic Who. It's like there's some loss of Time Lord stuff in Classic Who, but it's so the Crisis of Conscience stuff happening is like Dalek. It's very much a Dalek plot line. But the Time War thing is all New Who. It wasn't introduced in Classic Who.
Yeah, that's it. I did not know that. I just like assumed that was a continuation of a plot line.
No, it was a creation for the start of New Who, to make the transition into the new series easier, basically.
Oh. Okay.
That's the simplest way that I can put it without getting super theological and filmmakery about the show that started everything for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna skip through some of the cards. But yeah, that's super interesting. Like I said, I had just assumed that was a major plot point, and that was just hey, here's this thing, we're carrying this on, and kind of giving us some extra context. But so we got K9 Mark 1, a robot dog. Negative, as long as K9 Mark 1 is untapped, other legendary creatures you control have ward 1. Affirmative, 1 and a blue, target legendary creature can't be blocked this turn. And then Doctor's Companion, you can have 2 commanders if the other is the Doctor. I love this as like this. It's this little dog. It comes out and protects your commander. I love what they're doing with the companions. K9 is not a companion that I have any specific like affinity to, since I've only seen New Who. K9 does show up in New Who, but like it's more of like a throwback versus being like the character. But I like this a lot. I think that this is super fun. I also love the flavor of negative versus affirmative.
Yeah.
And getting to see that on the card.
I love K9. K9's great in every aspect of the show, both throwback and classic Who. Um, and again, this goes back to what I was saying about the Weeping Angels. Like, it's fun to see them integrating major aspects of the characters into how they play in the game.
Yep.
Even if it is just like how they title the capabilities.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the flavor words, I think they started doing with the D&D set. And I feel like it's almost like training wheels, but like in a good way. Of like, hey, we want you to know where we're coming at with this. This is why we're doing this, versus just putting it on the card and being like, figure it out. I like that it kind of gives you that, like, here is the flavor that we have. And so, and then I wanted to talk about this one. So this is a split card, which means you can cast either side. Or because it has fuse, you can cast both sides at once. And so this is Gallifrey Falls No More. And this is another one that I really like. So if you cast Gallifrey Falls, this deals 4 damage to each creature. A creature dealt damage this way would die this turn. If a creature that was dealt damage this way would die, exile it instead. And then No More is any number of creatures you control phase out. So I love the idea and how this ties in with the story. Of like, there's all of this destruction, but it turns out things maybe weren't as destroyed as you thought. And so I really like that. And I like the transition with the Doctor and Amy versus the Doctor and the War Doctor as the characters.
Fun fact, that's the Curator and not the War Doctor.
Oh, well, look at me.
I'm going to pull an actually on you.
Hey, I'm happy to be actually.
Actually.
Happy to be actually.
The Curator, and otherwise known as my most favorite moment in the entire show.
Oh, yeah.
And it is the first time that Tom Baker makes a reappearance on the show since he finished his run as the 4th Doctor. And I love it so much. So, that is the Curator on the far right.
Nice.
AKA, presumably a Time Lord who's like a museum person.
Yeah. With a name like the Curator. But.
There's my actually moment because it is one of my most favorite little snippets of all time. I could talk about it forever.
Again, happy to be wrong. And then we're not going to dwell on these, but we also got a bunch of new planes, like Amy's house. So these are part of the plane chase variant. And so we're not necessarily going to chat through all of those, but I think that that's really cool. Plane chase is an awesome way to play Magic. I love that we got it in March of the Machine, and then now it's coming back. And again, it's another great way to show off locations that might have been hard to capture in a normal card. And so I'm very excited to see set piece wise, what all do we get to see as those planes versus what all are we going to kind of just be vibing with as an actual card. And so, but yeah, with all of that, Doctor Who, like I said, previews should be going on this week. There'll be a looks like a live stream tomorrow at noon Central Time, 1 Eastern, and then there should be more spoilers rolling out throughout the week. And so definitely recommend if you're interested in it, please keep an eye out. A lot of creators will be posting stuff. And so, but yeah, that is where we're going to end. Unless, Emma, do you have any final Doctor Who statements to wrap us up on?
I love it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So stay tuned. More Doctor Who talks coming. Again, probably not next week. I think we'll wait until closer to actual release to return, but
preferably
definitely
after my deck arrives in the mail, so that I can have time to look through it and remember the rules I learned,
Yes.
and maybe play a game or two with it.
Yes. And so we'll figure out time to chat about it, time to hopefully play some. I know it's something that we've been wanting to do as well, is to get a game going. So,
Yeah.
but yeah. So with that, some announcements. We still haven't decided our book club book. We'll talk about that, try to get that by next week, and figure out what we're going to do for October. But I do want to say tomorrow, Tuesday the 3rd, assuming everything goes to plan, I will be guesting over on Checkpoint Church for Twig, which is this week in gaming. And so you can come over there and see me. If you're watching this later, go find the Twig over on Checkpoint's YouTube and chatting with Nate. And then there's another project that's kind of in the works. And so that's being recorded this week as well. And so not exactly sure when that's going to be public, so we're going to keep it on the DL for now.
Fabulous.
Although it's part of City on a Hill, so it's not like by any means like a super big surprise. But and so it's a special thing that we're trying out. And so so with that, hopefully everybody can come find us, hang out. As a reminder, you can find us around the internet as OneGeek411. You can join our Discord server, shoot us an email at 1stgeek41@gmail.com. Check us out on Redbubble. Watch live Monday nights at 6:45 Mountain Time, and find our videos over on YouTube, where you can like, comment, and subscribe. And then you can also find us on our personal social media. Mine is Humar Whittle.
Mine is I am not prepared with an I in the prepared.
And it's been a great week.
Go outside.
I love you.